Hello and welcome back to another command block tutorial. Today's video we are going to be doing the probably #1 most requested bending type, of course guys, based on Avatar the Last Airbender, everyone's favorite elemental type, which is of course bread bending. I know this is what you guys have all been waiting for. I don't know why I let you guys vote for things. You guys make stupid decisions, but you know what? I do them anyways. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, I make these commands on a live stream. I let you guys vote on what I actually get to make, so make sure you guys are subscribed, notifications on, if you guys want to be a part of that whole process and deciding what I make for you guys. But anyways, let's get into the bread bending and see the 4 abilities that I have designed. So the first of which is the one I kind of already showed, which is the bread toss. Pretty simple. You'll see that later. The bread toss is pretty simple. Just a nice long-range projectile. Really good. You can take out kind of hordes of enemies, more or less in a line. Pretty simple. Of course, you know, the most basic attack of bread bending that we see throughout, of course, the show, Avatar the Last Airbender and Legends of Korra. We kind of see like this is the basic attack that all the bread benders would use. The next one, and this one is probably my favorite of all of them, is the sandwich attack. Basically, you hold some hay bale, you sneak, and it's going to create a sandwich in front of you, and then it's going to immediately, like, crush whatever is inside the sandwich. So let me spawn in a few more of these guys. It's really fun. It's actually a really strong attack, too. It does, like, a ton of damage. Just sandwich all these guys. This is my favorite attack. I'm going to see how much it does on a Ravager. Boom, you can kill a Ravager in 2 sandwiches. That's definitely the amount of sandwiches you thought you could kill a Ravager. Yes, this tutorial is entirely serious. I don't know what you're talking about. Next up, we of course have the most popular stealth ability for the bread benders that we see within the show, and that is the wheat morph. So this, of course, lets us turn into wheat as long as we are holding wheat in our hand. And it also kind of hides our hand using some play animation stuff. You might actually be able to see a little tiny dot of what's in my hand. You can't really tell. I don't know if you'll be able to see it in the recording, but I can see it here. Of course, this is how the wheat benders were able to get around in stealth to plan all of their stealth attacks on the other nations. This was the wheat morph. Yeah, it's pretty good stealth. Lets you get in and out of combat pretty well. And of course, the bread benders were famous for their homeopathic remedies and their ability to heal themselves. So if I go into survival and teleport myself 20 blocks up, as you can see, when I'm holding these seeds, I heal. It's pretty simple, but of course, the bread benders were known for their abilities to heal. So we wanted to make sure we incorporated that into the gameplay in some fashion. So, pretty simple on the last 2, but as you can see, the first 2 are a little bit more complicated in terms of the commands that are required, including some fancy scoreboards. But the whole goal for this video was just to really replicate the bread benders from the show, and just let you guys actually reenact what it would be like to be a bread bender and just a member of the bread nation. Anyways, let's get into it with the command block tutorial. So the first thing that you're actually going to want to do is make sure that you have, or anyone in your world that you want to be a bread bender has the tag breadb. You can type this command in to chat if you are not sure how tags actually work in game, but if you know how tags work, you know what I'm talking about. I also have a tutorial on tags, but enough shameless plugging. The other thing that we wanted to do is make a scoreboard. So what we're doing here is just adding the bread timer scoreboard, or bread T for short. So you can put this in a command block, you can type this out in chat. The best way to power it is, of course, to put a lightning rod on top and then summon a lightning bolt. And that will power it and create your scoreboard. But that's it for the setup. Let's talk about the actual commands, what's going on, how we're doing things. If you guys have seen my other bending videos so far, I've made 2, which is the fire and the earth bending. What we're doing with this is we're actually, and I know this is going to sound really dumb if you haven't seen these videos before, we're summoning a boat 80 blocks into the air, then we're summoning an armor stand below it, making the armor stand invisible, making that hold bread, and then making that just cut through the air and damage everything in its set path. And I know that sounds dumb, but that's what's going on. It's how the bread benders in the show do it, so don't judge me. So, what we're doing here is we are checking for somebody that is holding bread in their main hand, but they don't have the tag bread throw. The tag bread throw is after the person has thrown bread. We only want them to throw bread one time per sneak because, of course, in the show, the bread toss was not like an automatic weapon. It was kind of like a semi-automatic thing, and we want to be accurate to the show. So what we're doing is we, of course, are summoning it 80 blocks in the air, just a boat, that's all. We're checking if the player is sneaking while holding bread, they don't have the tag, yada yada yada, we summon a boat, all there is to it. Similar to that, we're doing more or less the exact same command, going 80 blocks up, and we're giving the boat the tag bread. This is how we know which boat is which, so we don't confuse it, of course, with the other types of boats that the bread benders were known for summoning. Then, more or less the same command once again. This is just going to play a little sounds, that way it sounds more like the bread bender toss from the show. Next up, we're going to give the player the tag bread throw. This makes it so they're not going automatic. It's basically going to make it so, hey, we threw it. You're done throwing now. And then, of course, when the player is no longer sneaking, we're going to remove the tag bread throw. That basically primes the player and makes them ready to throw again. And next up, we're talking bread visuals, of course. What we're doing is at anything that has the tag bread, which is the boat, that does not have the tag bread viz, we're going to summon an armor stand named bread viz. So this is going to be the visual armor stand holding the bread. Now, any boat that doesn't have the tag bread viz, what we're doing here is making it so it only summons one armor stand per boat. Next up, we're giving the boat the tag bread viz. And of course, we have to put bread in the main hand of our armor stand for the bread to be visual. And lastly, we don't want to see the armor stand, of course, we only want to see the bread, so we give the armor stand invisibility. And now we're going to get into a little bit of the bread mechanics. So the first thing that we're going to do is just make it so the bread teleports itself in place. This just makes it so the bread doesn't fall out of the sky, because falling bread would be weird. Then we're going to teleport the bread visual relative to the nearest bread. So basically this just makes it so the armor stand is teleporting under the boat. Pretty simple stuff. Then we're going to make it so for the bread visual, it's going to kill itself unless there is a boat within 90 blocks. This way, in case something ever happens to the boat, you don't have a bunch of invisible armor stands causing a bunch of lag and clutter in your game. Next, we're going to be actually teleporting the bread forward. What we're doing is at the bread, teleport itself 7 blocks forward. Then we're going to be doing the actual damage. So what we're doing is just going 81 blocks below the boat for anything that's not having the tag bread B, so none of the bread benders, as well as not the armor stand. It's doing 20 override damage. This is a lot of damage. Because we're using override, it basically just does a lot of damage. You guys don't know how override works. It does a lot of damage. Then we're doing another teleport command, and yet another damage command. The reason we have 2 is that this makes it move faster without skipping blocks. It's better hit detection while still being able to move fast. That's all that we're doing. One thing I should mention that if you guys don't want it to be doing a ton of damage, you might want to remove this override portion. And additionally, if you guys want to adjust the damage that it actually does do, you can go ahead and change this number to make it higher or lower, or whatever you deem necessary for your bread bending adventures. That is a mouthful. And lastly, we're just going to be adding a timer. So we're going to kill anything that has the bread timer of 10. This is the scoreboard that we made at the beginning. Then we're going to be adding at anything that has the tag bread a bread T of 1. I should mention that this is on a 4-tick delay. This is the repeating command. And lastly, we're going to add a bread timer to the bread visual. This just makes it so they're both on the timer and they're going to get killed at around the same time. Not necessarily 100% necessary. That was a redundant statement, but you guys know what I mean. Just include it and it will work for you. This is a good tutorial. Alright, next up, we have the sandwich command. And I think this is actually my favorite command of the whole bunch. The audio actually works really well, the particles look really well, and just the whole fact that you're sandwiching something is really funny. I mean, come on. And I think, yes, I know the bread toss is kind of the signature move of the bread benders, but it was really the sandwich attack that you saw like the really advanced bread benders use in the show, which is why I really want to include it, and I think it's just really cool. So similar to the last one, we're making a scoreboard here. So go ahead, type this into command block, type this into chat. It doesn't really matter which, we're just adding the sandwich. And of course, we're going to summon a lightning bolt to power it. And just to show you guys a little bit how this works a bit better, I'm going to add the sandwich to the side. So what's essentially happening here is that when I'm holding this hay block, see, hay bale, in my hands, and I sneak, the sandwich score on the side of my screen is going to add up. So what's actually happening is that when it hits, I believe, 1, it places the outer edges of the crust. Then when the number gets a bit higher, it's going to give the particles in the play sound. Then it's going to move the crusts closer together and do the damage attack. So it's really cool. It's my favorite ability. It came out really well for sandwich bending. So let's see how it actually functions. The first thing that we're going to be doing is messing with the timer. This is checking, is the player holding hay block in their hands? Do they have the bread bending tag? If so, go ahead and add the sandwich score of 1. And this is of course the reset. So we're checking for any bread benders that are not sneaking. That's what if entity means here. If they're not sneaking, reset their sandwich score to 0. Pretty simple. Then this is a little bit more complicated, but all we're doing is making it so that if there's anybody with a sandwich score of 0, so any bread benders in the area that are not actively sandwich bending, we're going to just get rid of all the hay blocks in the area. This makes it so you don't have a ton of crusts all over your world. Next up, we're going to check when the player hits the sandwich score of 5, and this gets a little repetitive, but hear me out, just follow me here. What we're doing is we're going out in front of the player 4 blocks, and then we're going to the side 2 blocks. Then we're going to be filling from that block to 3 blocks up. That sounds like a lot, but hear me out, I'm going to explain what this does. So imagine the player is standing here. Imagine the player is standing, I'm going to use sand because we're talking sandwiches. Imagine the player is standing here. We're going to go out 4 blocks, so 1, 2, 3, 4, then we're going to go to the side. We're going to fill that block, and we're going to fill all the way up 3 blocks. So I'm standing here, and I do my sandwich command. You see that this area gets filled. That's what this command does. Now we look at the next command. It's exactly the same, except it's 5 here. Okay, so we're going here. We're going 5 blocks out, 2 blocks over, and we're putting sand here. I just want to show you guys that this is what the fill commands are doing, so you guys actually have an idea of what's going on behind the scenes. I don't want you guys to just copy and paste. I really hope that you guys are able to learn from these tutorials, not just copy and paste. So we more or less do this same thing, same principle a couple of times. We give up 6, and then we switch to the other side. So now instead of +2, we're doing -1. So we're going to go out 4 and -1. And then we're going to go up 3. And you can imagine we do the same thing this amount of times to boom. We have the outer crust of our sandwich based on where I'm looking. Now the reason we did multiple pillars instead of like a flat block, for those of you who might be wondering, is we want this to also work at a diagonal angle. As you can see, it works flat, it also works diagonally. So that's why we're doing basically a bunch of pillars rather than something else. Anyways, enough of the demonstration. Let's show you the rest of the commands. And just in case, I am going to go through all of the commands real quick, show them all on screen for those of you who do just want to copy and paste this. I understand. So I'm going to show you them all one by one. Keep in mind, the only difference between any of these commands is the number up here in the top right of the commands. Alright, let's get into the actual attack of this. Next up, what we're doing is we're making so when the sandwich is equal to 10, we're going to basically put this knockback roar particle about where the sandwich is. Of course, basically the same thing. We're going to be going to the position of the sandwich. We're going to be anything within a radius of 3, doing damage of 50. Now, of course, you can make this number whatever you want. 50 is quite high. It's going to kill a player like 2.5 times over. So you can make whatever you want. 50 is already quite high, but you know, it's your commands. Next up, we're actually going to be getting rid of the existing hay block. This just makes it so that the outer crust disappears before the inner crust appears. And of course, we're going to be playing this sound, and I have random.explode on a volume, but with a pitch of 0.3. This makes it kind of loud and slower. And lastly, we're going to be doing the same thing we did for the outer crust, but for the inner crust. So as you can see here, it's exactly the same command, except we have 1 instead of 2. And I'm just going to show you all of the commands. Of course, instead of -1, we just don't have anything here. That's all there is to it. Just that set of commands, and you guys are going to be sandwich bending, which I know is a subtype of bread bending, but I do want to do some of the subtypes in the main bending videos for you guys. So I just really like how the sandwich bending came out. I just think it's really accurate to the show, and it's really fun to use. I never actually used it straight up. I should probably get back to the tutorial now. Alright, the last two are actually a lot simpler. Just since these two were really complicated, for the sake of simplicity, I wanted to add like 2 that are pretty easy to follow. The first is, of course, the wheat morph. Now, once again, this was something from the show that I did want to recreate. It just happened to also be pretty simple, so hopefully you guys will enjoy that and enjoy your wheat morph. First thing that we're doing is we're just checking for anything that has wheat in their main hands. We're actually going to fill the whole area getting rid of wheat. And you might be wondering, why are we getting rid of wheat if we're supposed to be placing wheat? Well, what we want to do is that as I'm moving around, you don't want to be leaving a trail of wheat, of course. That would leave any enemies very apparent of your current location just by following the trail. Rather, you are a piece of moving wheat, which is, of course, also more accurate to the show and the way the bread benders are depicted there. Next up, we're actually going to be placing the wheat with a growth value of 7, just it's full-grown wheat, that's all that means, for anything holding wheat in their main hands. Then, of course, anything holding wheat is getting invisibility, because you don't want to be seeing yourself. And lastly, we're doing a play animation of creeper swelling. The reason we're doing that is that if we don't have this, and I will just temporarily disable that with a typo, you'll see, oh, I'm holding wheat in my hand. Very clearly, this is not wheat, but a poorly disguised wheat bender. Would any other bender, it's not stealthy. All the other benders, all the other nations are going to know you're a wheat bender. So, this command is the creeper swelling command, which I'm actually going to show you what this looks like if I'm not invisible, so you guys can just learn and see what's going on. You can see that my torso is just tiny and really glitchy. And so what this effectively does, when I actually re-add the invisibility, is makes it so you can't actually see the item that's in my hands. And for those of you guys who are wondering a cool trick to make invisibility even stronger, and especially in PvP, you can use this play animation to not only hide your hand, but also hide some of your armor, especially if you're wearing helmets or like a chest plate. Now, I don't believe it's going to hide your legs. It's not going to hide your boots either. So you can obviously see the legs, but you can actually hide your upper torso of armor as well as anything you're holding. And you also get kind of a cool expanding animation when you come back. But that's essentially it for the wheat morph. And finally, we of course have the seeds growth, which are, one of the most common items in the show, especially for the bread benders. One of their most useful items was the growth seeds. So what we have here is just simple. We're checking, hey, anything holding wheat seeds, give it instant health. And we do have this on a long delay, and it's pretty simple, just instant health if you're holding seeds. So it's more or less, since we don't have a ton of defensive abilities, the wheat seeds also kind of balance out the whole kit as a fighting combo by giving you a little bit something to help you survive against the wrath of the other benders. So I really hope you guys enjoyed. This was something that was, of course, voted on a live stream. So if you guys aren't aware, I do try to stream like every week and let you guys vote on what you want to see in my tutorials. So I don't normally ask for subscribers, but if you guys do want to be part of those streams, I do recommend it, just so you can make sure you can keep an eye on those streams. Other than that, if you guys have questions, I do recommend joining our Discord. This is, of course, the third of 4 elemental bendings from Avatar the Last Airbender, and I hope you guys enjoy. So, that was a really bad outtake, but I'm going to keep it because I don't know what else to do. Bye!